Hello and welcome to my report on the solar PV and Powerwall performance at our property for March 2021. Here's the first graph showing the electrical energy coming into the whole property according to the utility and solar meter readings. The total solar production this month was 448 units, a daily average of 14.4 units. The old solar southwest output was ahead of solar southeast throughout the month, aided by the fact that there was so little direct sunlight on the panels. The figure for the export to the grid comes from the Tesla app, as we don't have an export meter. 37 units were reportedly exported to the grid, 3.7% of the total energy coming into the property and 8.3% of the solar energy produced, though I expect that figure is higher than reality, as will be explained in a minute. 543 units were imported from the grid during the month, around 10% down on February. 9 of these units were peak rate, so over 98% of the grid electricity was imported at off-peak rate, much the same as last month. The 2 storage heaters in the annex were off at weekends, and it looks like one of them was turned off by the tenant towards the end of the month. Our 2-year fixed-rate Economy 7 deal came to an end on the 1st of the month, and we are starting a new 2-year fixed-rate tariff, which is obviously a bit more expensive, but the average cost per unit remained at less than 10 pence because so little peak grid energy was taken in. This next graph shows where the energy used by the property came from, with the figures being taken from the Tesla app. The first half of the month shows figures which are in line with what has gone on for the past year, where the Tesla app figures have been only slightly out from the meter figures for grid input. On the 17th of March, we had a zappi car charging unit installed by the same people who had installed our Powerwall, but after that date, the Tesla app has been reporting figures for grid import and export which aren't in tune with the meter figures. The installers have been back a couple of times to check things and have now passed the issue on to Tesla, who are investigating. During their investigations, they have asked me to put the gateway into advanced cost-saving mode so I can look forward to some less than ideal behaviour as the Tesla AI makes its decisions without a clue as to what is happening with our changeable weather. So the graph for the second half of the month is slightly unreliable. The grid figures reported by the app are exaggerated, but not consistently by the same amount, and that will have a knock-on effect on some of the other figures, particularly the total consumption by the property. Here's a brief look at the energy usage graph for Saturday the 20th. At around 2:40 AM, the Powerwall is seen to start charging at 1.7 kilowatts, represented by the green block below the line. The grid, in grey, jumps from ticking over at around about 0.7 kilowatts up to 4.1 kilowatts, rising by twice the amount going into the Powerwall. The Tesla app assumes that the house consumption, in blue, must have jumped from 0.7 kilowatts to 2.4 kilowatts to make up the difference, but it is certain that no appliances came on and went off at exactly the same time as the Powerwall started and finished its charging. This is the more complex graph for Friday the 26th, after I had been asked to put the gateway into advanced cost-saving mode with an off-peak period from midnight to 7 AM. There is no charging of the Powerwall, and the storage heaters are taking power in the early hours. Looking at just the grey grid graph, we see that the app reports that 20.2 kilowatt hours have been drawn from the grid by 7 AM, although the meters show that 17.5 kilowatt hours have been taken. More strangely, the app also claims that 1.7 kilowatt hours have been exported to the grid, though the graph never goes below the axis to indicate export, and there certainly isn't any excess solar being produced in the dark. So the grid figures from the Tesla app are no longer reliable. This won't cause a problem with my electricity bills, as they are based on the meter readings. It just means I don't know exactly what is happening, and some parts of my video report won't be accurate. Back to the graph. Around 61% of the energy reportedly came from the grid, whereas the meter figures suggest that should be around about 55%. Overall, about 22.8% of the energy used was said to have come via the Powerwall, and most of the 54.3% said to have come directly from the grid was used by the storage heaters. I won't say any more about this graph, as the figures in the second half of the month are not fully to be trusted whenever the grid is involved. This graph shows the energy going into and out of the Powerwall each day as reported by the Tesla app. 88.2% of the energy that went in during the month came back out, near enough to the expected 90%. Here's the self-power graph. The Tesla app reports that the proportion of self-power was around 46% over the month, which is less than February, but remember that the grid input is being over-reported by the Tesla system, so it's another graph which is less reliable than in previous months. Here's the solar southwest production over the years since 2012, which of course means we are back to figures obtained from meters. The monthly figure of 241 units is well below the March arithmetic mean of 278.4 and is the second worst March we've had. 2013 was the worst so far. The cumulative view of the year's production for the first 3 months tells the same story, with 2021 now lagging behind every year except 2013. Here's the graph showing the daily output of the 2 solar arrays for the past 365 days. The 28-day moving average lines finish a few units below where they were a year ago, backing up the narrative that this has been a dull winter and a poor March. Here's the usual quick glance at the energy input for the past 365 days, hoping that the grey will fade away from now on. And the daily solar production for the same period for those just interested in the solar. Here's the recently introduced summary graph for our electricity usage since we moved into the property in the summer of 2011. Along the bottom, each mark represents 1 month, with the labels at 6-month intervals. The red line shows the monthly peak rate consumption, which should remain low from now on, and the grey line shows the monthly low rate grid consumption. The peak is higher this winter compared to last winter, as both storage heaters have been on for longer in the annex. The dotted line shows the total number of units drawn in the month, which should closely match the low rate line in the future. The orange line shows the monthly cost of our electricity, including standing charge, since the summer of 2011, when referred to the axis on the right-hand side, and the green line shows the monthly feed-in tariff payment received for the solar southwest generation. The cost of a low-rate unit went up by 35% on March the 1st, when our long-term fixed-rate tariff ended, so electricity costs this coming year will obviously rise. That's it for this month. I'll leave you with the energy usage graphs from the Tesla app for each day of March, but remember that ones for the second half of the month occasionally show some unusual traits which you might spot. I hope to see you again next month, when things might have changed if the zappi starts to get used.